Hello folks, welcome back to Reality Check with Arvind Swaminathan. This is the second part of can we do without having to pay income tax, personal income tax, without the government getting upset about it. In fact, the government should initiate this particular piece of action. I don't think they'll lose anything, and they shouldn't if they do the job right. But first, more of the preamble. A lot of us forget one thing: we work very hard, yes, but how many of us work smart? I've always said if you see an opportunity, go for it. You don't have very much to lose. Like for instance, not so long ago when somebody was taking a little jibe at the Prime Minister Modi ji, and he said, sell samosas. And a whole lot of congressmen said, that isn't even employment. It is, it's self-employment. But the guy from Kalyan was going to Mumbai every day, selling 1,000 samosas, and he kept 1 rupee for himself. The other 9 went to the person who supplied the samosas. And he sold out every day. Now, to get an income like that, at least you're not losing the work habit, and second, you're not having to take loans just to meet your everyday requirements. Call that smart working. What about the chap who shut up his pan and bidi shop and went into tea selling? The pan bidi shop wasn't making much, but the tea stall, he made 10 times more money than I did. It looks ridiculous, I know, but this is a fact of life. And this is the guy who was advising me on how to evade tax, how not to attract attention to yourself. One, shave once a week, or no more than once in 4 or 5 days. Your clothes must be reasonably clean, but they must have a few blotches somewhere, like something dropped there and didn't quite come off. And there must be the odd few stitches, running repairs with a home needle and stuff. Then the policeman or the municipal character and these other guys say, poor guy, he's not making much, leave him be. Whereas if you're clean shaven every day, clean clothes, no patches, no blotches, the guy's doing well. Where's my hafta? Because please remember, this is a parallel economy, it's a cash economy. And you'll have a whole lot of people who levy their own taxes. Make no mistake, to them it is a tax. They're officials of part of the official government machinery, and they're levying this tax on people whom they think are making enough money to be able to pay that. The fact that they may be right is neither here nor there. The fact is they are charging a tax to allow the guy to stay there and work and make his money. So you see, it's not as if it doesn't happen, it does. Now the other side of this parallel economy is it opens up a whole Pandora's box, because here are where the big criminals begin, the real nasty ones. They start off in small gangs, in small towns, cities, large villages and things like this, wherever there is a certain population. In time they get ambitious, they push out the next one and take over his territory, and so on. So the little guy gets bigger and bigger and bigger. What is he going for? First is just petty protection, or what you call settlement money. For getting 2 groups together, he charges his commission. Then he moves into shopping centers and shopping areas. Each shopkeeper has to pay him protection money. But this is still small fry. The big stuff comes when you get into malls, shopping malls, expensive shops, expensive shopping areas. And why do they do it? There's money to be made. It is the working smart. It's illegal, yes, but it's still working smart. So is the tax avoidance bit. That's also illegal, but people do it. Why? Nobody likes paying tax. And this is something we better get into our thick heads. Government had better understand this. The higher the tax, the less people like it. And if it gets beyond a certain limit, they positively hate the idea. And they will go to all sorts of lengths to avoid having to pay it. I'll come to that a bit later on. Now these criminal gangs, what did they do? They move on to bigger things. They want a bigger gang, they need more money, more clout to make themselves look big alongside their rivals. So they go in for the protection money, which is the first thing probably. If that's not enough, kidnapping for ransom. During election time, they get paid by parties to frighten certain groups or certain areas into voting in their favor. They get helped with booth capturing and things like this. Yes, this is known. I mean, we don't talk about it, but it happens. They also go around with cash to a whole lot of slum families, bottle of booze or something like this. Why? To induce them to vote in your favor. Now, we're getting somewhere nearer the big time. What happens when these criminals start having aspirations to becoming politicians? They know then that their entire past will be wiped clean. They can go on to far bigger scams, white collar scams, without having to go through the dangerous bits of gangsterism and guns firing all over the place and so on. One of these big things was that Telgi stamp paper scam. Dawood Ibrahim or another one. Things like your betting, the satta, hawala. All these are outcomes of the cash economy or the parallel economy. You have the government official economy and you have the parallel economy, the cash economy. And this is where the cash economy is a sitting duck. They can't go to the police because they haven't paid their taxes. So they either pay up or pay the penalty. The other reason why they go after these people with cash, the official people who pay their taxes regularly and so on, have their money in banks. To get any money from them, you have to take checks. Now, checks are traceable. You can see where it's gone and who's taken it. And from there, the chain breaks down. You see, criminals are not stupid. You need brains to be that. And yet it's being used in a wrong direction. Now, if the government had been smart from the beginning, these brains would have been used for innovation, for inventions, so that we could do things and make things ourselves, prove to ourselves that India and Indians can do things. At the moment, we still lack that ability. I mean that, how shall I put it, the self-confidence that yes, we can do it. Now, how does one get people to understand this? The dislike of paying taxes and avoiding taxes is so deeply etched in our minds. It's almost second nature to us. Why? Because from the beginning, when you overtax or you go for what is known as overkill, They revolt, and once they revolt, they're in a state of constant rebellion. They don't care anymore. That fear of government and police is gone. They know even the police, a couple of thousand here or 10,000 there, is enough. They get away with it. Why wouldn't they? You look at it this way, for instance, if a company has to pay 1,000 crores in tax, they could quite easily employ a whole bunch of accountants. It may cost them 10, 20, 50 crores. But if those people can help them to save 500 of those 1,000 crores as tax, why not? Why won't they do it? I mean, that's also working smart. Because now they know there are ways around, quite legal, and they can't be touched. So why won't they do it? And yet, the government has not yet understood something. Nobody in this country gets away without paying tax. Nobody. I know you say anybody under 3 lakhs, he doesn't pay tax. He doesn't pay income tax. But that doesn't mean he doesn't pay tax. Everything he buys is taxed. And not only tax, it's taxed at 3 or 4 different places. Why? Look at it this way. A company making soap, it gets raw materials from somewhere. GST is paid on that. It comes to the factory. It's stored. There's a charge on that, but no tax yet. The paper for wrapping, that has to come in. That is taxed. Then the whole thing is manufactured. Or the perfumes and things, they also have to come in. GST is charged on that also. The whole thing is assembled together and packed, and is about to leave, there's a tax on that. GST again. It goes to the distributor in the state. GST, transport, which means petrol and diesel are taxed. It goes from there to the district, from the state to the district level distributor. Again, GST, tax, and transport. He will then give it to the dealers in his area. Again, GST, tax. Then the dealer will sell it to you and I. We buy it. We have to pay his tax also, meaning his profit margin. So at every stage, there is GST, margin, GST, margin, GST, margin. And I'm pretty certain that is where the major chunk of government taxes comes from, not from personal income tax. That is why there were so few people who actually paid income tax. And yet this attitude, people must not be allowed to become rich. I mean, that is all wrong apparently. Why? Only the government officials must be rich and have power as well. Whereas everybody else is there for them to kick around. I don't think that's right. But unfortunately, that's what they've been doing since 1947. The British did it, and our governments, they did it. Fortunately, possibly for the first time, we have a bunch of people who are looking after our country and governing, who begun to realize this. And I hope they see these videos and begin to understand that yes, people must have time to think, to spend time with their wives, their children, their parents, their brothers, their sisters, and their children. At the moment, they just don't have the time. They're too busy trying to make ends meet. They're too busy trying to figure out where am I going next, what can I do, how can I increase an income here, or a little bit more here, or a little bit more here, how can I twist things around so that something else, some more comes in. Because everything has become so expensive. Previous governments have neglected education, they've neglected medical services, they've neglected everything horribly. And to get it done privately today, it costs an arm and a leg. Or you have to pay in blood. There's no other way. Private hospitals, the average person just can't afford it. Education, same thing. You want to go to a medical college for medical training, how much does it cost you as a donation just to get into the place? Now you wonder why everything in the private sector is so much more expensive. Now you see the PSUs, what is the culture there? It's the same babudam, the same netagiri. Each officer must have so many peons, some to do his wife's shopping, some to run errands from the home to take kids to school and back, and probably a vehicle with petrol expenses there, plus your own in the office. Plus you need 4 typists, 3 PAs, 2 stenos. And here's it, wait for it. Any work to be done outside, you don't do it, you just tell 5 people, they do it. Now what are you there for? Is this the same Babu, the IAS man or something again, all over again? Now why do you have that culture in the public sector? It isn't there in the private sector. And you begrudge the officer who gets paid 3 times more than the IAS man because he does all this work and he cuts out all this unnecessary hiring. See, the mind and the culture has to change. If you don't, we're stuck in that same old time war of the British who gets everybody else to do everything for him. He does nothing. Have you seen that culture in action? You know where it came from. Why? Because of total unwillingness to change. Keep on doing what was done before. Why can we not change it? Why don't we get out of that? In 2016, we had something called demonetization. A lot of people are against it. The opposition parties just keep banging away at the government. Why did you do this? You didn't plan it. There was no planning, nothing. Yes, there was no planning. Why? 2 containers were caught in Kerala. Each one contained 5,000 crore rupees. 5,000 crores is a lot of money, and 2 of those means 10,000 crores. Right? Intelligence reports also said there were another 100 such containers either in Pakistan or in West Asia or in ships on the way, or a few may have already landed. Now you think if 100 such containers had come in and that money had been distributed, that's 5 lakh crores. What would it have done to our economy? Just think. Would you even know which was a fake note and which wasn't? No. Let's look at it this way. After demonetization, the notes came back, those particular denomination notes which were outlawed came back to the Reserve Bank. For every 100 notes which the Reserve Bank had printed, 113 came back. How? Now you think, just think. Only 70 to 80 should have come back because of poor condition which the Reserve Bank itself would have destroyed. And yet that means an extra 33 to 40% notes which came in were probably fake. So think of the extent of that particular business. Very dubious business, but a very paying one. Aided and abetted by the fact that these notes were printed in Germany at the time, at the same place where Pakistan got its currency printed, with the same paper coming from the same company, and the ink also available at the same company. How much easier could it be? Anybody doing it here, and I suspect a good chunk was actually done in this country. Conveniently, the Pakistanis have done it. I mean, just think how easy it is to point the finger there when you're doing it yourself here. Now we talk about all this terrorism. Where does the money come from? There you see. There's all these fake currency notes which we don't know. And out of those 113 that have come in, the RBI is still wondering which are the real notes and which are the fake ones. The quality of those fake notes is so spot on that it's difficult to tell even for the RBI. And this is made easier because a huge chunk of our economy is the parallel economy. This could not happen at such an extent or to such an extent if there wasn't such a huge parallel or cash economy or black economy. So you see, we have to start getting into the legal economy or the white economy. We have to get away from illegalities. Otherwise our whole system breaks down. What can the police do? Nothing. And we have to learn to pay our taxes. Why? Simply because when you expect protection from the state in the form of a police force against criminals and this and that, or protection from the law courts against frauds and things like this, and yet you don't want to pay taxes, which is what helps give you this protection. It's like expecting the union to do everything for you, but you don't want to pay your union dues. How can you expect that? If you expect that, I'm sorry, you're living in a fool's paradise, because it's not going to happen, and it's not happening at the moment. Because of this fact that you cannot go to the police, because then they'll ask you, where did you get this money from? What's your answer? You can't tell them, I saved it by not paying tax. Then you're the one who goes in. So you see, the ills or the evils which come from this so-called economy, and it is something we have to do something about now. We have the chance now, anymore, and we'll have nothing short of anarchy. And how do you do it? Very simple. Governments from the beginning, or those who are looking after industry and so on, especially with Licensed Raj in place, had no idea. What did they do? They let a company start up, get up to a certain level, and then stop, just stagnate there. Now, if you make it stagnate, how does it show that it's still growing? By raising prices, galloping inflation. The government cannot collect taxes at a rate above the previous level unless there is growth. But you don't let them grow because there is a license that says you may only produce so much. Anything produced above that carries a heavy fine. So where does he go? It's a vicious circle. You're sort of catching each other out. And taxation goes higher and higher, and people get so mad they pay less and less. I mean, why is the government at war with the public? Instead of the public and the government working together, they're at war. I'll give you an example. I worked once in a place where they had an installed capacity of 60,000 tons per annum. And one year, at the request of the government, they said, let's show us what you can produce. This man throws his chest out and says, aren't I great? I gave 80,000 tons last year. And of course, I happened to be sitting there and I said, please sir, you're still way below capacity. He said, what do you mean? I said, your actual capacity is somewhere between 3.5 lakh tons and 5.4 lakh tons per annum. He said, where do you get these figures from? He was really mad. I said, well, in June you packed 45,000 tons. In July you packed 30,000 tons. That's 75. Are you telling me that your capacity is such that in the other 10 months you only do 5,000 tons? Is that what you call production? I don't. See, all those licenses that were issued, nowhere did it say 1 shift, 2 shifts or 3 shifts a day working. If you assume that they were all for 1 shift a day, your actual capacity was almost 2.75 times that. But nobody ever achieved that because they were never allowed to. And they couldn't even apply for it, otherwise they'd be accused of having far greater capacity than they actually got permission for. So what does he do? There's nothing he could do. And taxation levels went higher and higher and higher. And who were the first people you taxed? The salaried people. Business people got away with a great deal. Shopkeepers got away with a great deal. But the people who were on salaries, they had nowhere to run. And they still resent governments simply because they have to pay taxes which other people refuse to pay. And others get away with it. And unless our government people understand that, look, people have to be allowed to produce, and if you don't let them grow, if you don't let their businesses grow, how does your tax base increase? It's not the tax per unit that counts, but the tax per unit coupled with the turnover. If the turnover increases, your taxes increase, but the rate remains the same. It doesn't go up. Now, most people don't mind a certain amount of tax. Why? Give it to the government, otherwise they'll come and ask a whole lot of silly questions. Okay, what is that sort of level? What is it that people will pay without getting too upset about it? Now, it could be somewhere between 8 and 12 or 13%. Beyond that, and they'll all revolt. And of course, once they start revolting, all sorts of new ways will be found. Whether you like it or not, they'll do it. Another very well-known example today are shell companies. What do? Nothing. They just show so much expenditure, fictitious expenditure, and show no production. Therefore, it's a loss. And somebody set this up to avoid paying tax. The other well-known way of avoiding tax is inflation accounting. How do you do that? Depreciation is a big example. Many years ago, what they used to do was, look, if you spend 100 crores, depreciation brings it back in 10 years, 10 crores at a time, plus interest. Now that is fine. It's legitimate and legal and very honest. But what they did was, say the third year, if I wanted to put in this plant today, it wouldn't cost 100 crores but 300 crores. So I will charge depreciation on 300 crores. So instead of 10 crores being taken out, he's had 30 crores here plus another 30 at 10% interest of the principal amount. Up go your prices immediately by a big chunk. This is the sort of thing of books that were being presented. I hope it doesn't happen now, but if it does, you got your work cut out to stop it. Because a lot of people are suffering. There are many other industries, like the milk industry. There's so many overheads there, it isn't funny. But nobody knows about it. So everything goes along as if nothing had happened. There's so much that can be done to bring down prices. But, as they say, everything is easy when you know how. And government has to have people who know and understand these things. And yet when you find somebody who knows and who understands, who knows how to put it down or bring it down, you throw him out. You don't want such people. I know Nehru didn't. And I know his successors. They never did. Because they were just too ignorant to understand it. They only copied what everybody else did. Anyway, folks, thank you for listening. The next one, we'll get down to the nitty-gritty of how it can really be avoided, where it is not necessary, and the government should understand personal income tax is not necessary to waste all our time and drive us into becoming proverbial blue-nosed flies, running around just to make ends meet, no time for anything or anybody else. Part 3 is the one you should really look at, and this one, and the first part. Look at all three together. Then you'll begin to understand where it began, what happened, what are the offshoots, and then how you can put it right. Because until you understand those two, the third one you won't understand. Anyway, please look at it closely right through to the end, all three, including the next one that's coming. All the best, and see you next time. Pass on to your other groups, your friends, your relatives, and ask them to pass it on too, because this is something which concerns all of us. All the best. Bye.